Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Optimize ABM Campaigns for the Demand Unit, not MQLs. I'm Brian Anderson, News Editor at Demand Gen Report, and I'll be your moderator for this presentation. Truly appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. I'm going to go through a few housekeeping slides here. To start, I encourage all attendees to get social with us during and after today's presentation. Please follow along and share your thoughts and feedback on Twitter using the hashtag #COSeries. You can also connect with us using the @DG_report Twitter handle, or reach out to me directly. My Twitter handle is @G3Brian, and our presenter is reachable at all the handles listed on this slide. Please feel free to share any questions or thoughts you have throughout the presentation. We're also hosting a special sweepstakes throughout this week-long series where attendees can win a free ticket to our annual B2B Marketing Exchange, which will take place in Scottsdale, Arizona in February 2019. If you register for a COS webinar, you will automatically be entered for a chance to win. And if you attend any sessions live, you receive a second entry. We'll be announcing winners at the end of each day of the series, so stay tuned and we'll be sure to connect with you if you win. For those of you who may be new to Demand Gen Report, here is a really quick overview. We are an online media company publishing daily news, a weekly email newsletter, special reports, original research, and a variety of additional resources. If you haven't done so already, join more than 45,000 subscribers to our weekly newsletter by subscribing to Demand Gen Report today. For today's presentation, we're using the On24 platform. During the presentation, you can access all the information you need from the platform toolbar. We encourage you to ask our presenter questions. To do so, simply click the Q&A widget at the top right corner of the screen. Today's presentation is slated to run about 25 to 30 minutes with 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A following the session. You can submit your questions using this Q&A widget at any time. Today's session is being recorded, and all attendees will receive an archive link to the presentation to go back and review or to share with your peers and colleagues. In addition to joining the conversation online and submitting your questions, we also welcome and encourage you to let us know how we're doing. In an effort to constantly improve the level of value we provide our audience members, we've put together a very brief survey that will automatically launch once this webinar session ends. You can also pull up, complete, and submit the survey at any time during this webinar by clicking on the survey icon circled here at the bottom of this screen. Before signing off today, please take a moment to complete this questionnaire. Doing so will help us better serve you. Now I am pleased to introduce our featured speaker for today, Feng Hong. Feng is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Full Circle Insights, which is a marketing and sales performance measurement provider. Without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to you, Feng. Take it away.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Hi, guys. This is Feng speaking from Full Circle Insights. And as Brian said, I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Full Circle Insights. And just as a little bit of background, so you know where my head is at and where I'm coming from as I approach this whole marketing metrics and how to measure ABM performance. I myself have a finance background in investment banking and venture capital. So much like a lot of you, I spent a lot of time in spreadsheets, though I probably love spreadsheets more than most people, but we all love and hate them. Secondly, I wanted to tell you guys that in my career, I've been focused on the areas of ad tech, martech, and B2B. So definitely understand B2B marketing and all the different, call it solutions that are out there, all the different companies that help with different areas of the, call it marketing funnel and marketing channels. And so there's a lot of stuff that's out there. You know, Chief Martech's 5,000 plus companies on that big landscape. So very familiar with the industry and navigating that in understanding B2B marketing and marketing challenges. And then lastly, I want to say that I borrow that finance and analytical background to always preach an analytical approach as the key to your audience measurement and understanding your audience, and also understanding where you're performing in order to grow your audience and grow in performance. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Full Circle Insights. We are a native marketing analytics tool inside of Salesforce, and we provide marketing analytics in the areas of, call it campaign ROI and funnel metrics. And some of our other products include lead to account matching. And I'm not going to talk too much about our products, but definitely want to tell you that there's a lot of technology out there that help you understand your marketing metrics and your performance, as well as you know, connect leads to accounts. And we'll go over some of that technology that helps you do that in order to help you be a better marketer. Our agenda today, let me just tell you, we're going to first define the ABM funnel really quickly for those who don't know, but also I suspect most of you know what the ABM funnel is and what demand units are, but I wanted to define that and how different it is from your regular lead funnel. Then I want to talk about translating that demand unit waterfall to Salesforce. What does that look like? And then I'm going to go into the measurements of your ABM performance, in particular the topics of account engagement, funnel progression, revenue generation. These are specific metrics that you want to look at. And then finally, ABM and non-ABM campaign measurement, or what that looks like. How do you evaluate your ABM strategy itself in your campaigns? We'll leave you with some takeaways, and then we'll go into Q&A. All right. So the demand unit and ABM funnels, how do we define those? Well, there's a regular lead funnel we all know and love. They look kind of the same, you know, inquiry, and you got marketing qualified lead, or MQL, sales qualified lead, SQL, and then closed won or closed loss at the end. You know, you have different micro sales stages in between, such as sales accepted lead or sales qualified opportunity. You know, you have different flavors, but essentially they all look the same. Now, what are the challenges of having this regular lead funnel? What are the challenges of response-based marketing, pure response-based marketing, nothing else in your marketing strategy? Well, looking at the left side, this picture of a boat and a fishing net. As you can see here, it's casting a wide net. It's broad, but it might be too broad. Too inbound, waiting for fish to come into this net, and then finally it's too passive. You know, you're waiting around. It doesn't even seem like there's a person in the boat. Maybe that person's sleeping. So, you know, it's quite passive. Now, what does that look like when you look into the water? Well, looking at the right side, you've got fish, obviously. But what this response-based marketing leads you to do is it leads you to become too focused on individual engagement or individual lead engagement rather than consensus building. As you can see here, there's one fish on the right side, that's a clownfish, and on the left side there's some blue fish. I think they're called royal blue tangfish. And so when you're pursuing that fish on the right side, you may be forgetting about the school of fish involved in the purchase of your solution. And so buyer group engagement is required to truly assess the opportunity. And you need to continue to focus on that buyer group engagement. This response-based marketing may lead you down a path of being too focused on that one fish. If you've ever seen Finding Nemo, that clownfish versus the blue tangfish, the blue tangfish are dories, and if you've seen that movie, dories are very forgetful, and so you have to continuously engage with the full buyer group, remind them that you have this solution, and that you exist, and that you can solve their problems and get that group consensus. All right, so let's define some terms here. Buyer group versus demand unit. We all know what buyer groups are just from the name of it. You've got different personas in a buyer group, maybe different job titles or different roles in purchasing. That's the buyer group. Now, what's a demand unit? The demand unit is a buyer group that has purchase intent or inquiry intent, an intent to do research into a certain problem that your solution solves. That's the demand unit for your solution. There can be many buyer groups who don't have that purchase intent, but that department exists, or they may have purchase intent and they may not, have the intent to purchase your solution. So this is specific to your solution by the buyer group that is responsible for purchasing. Now, this is how a demand unit engages with you. Now, buying scout is who we've defined as the person who does that research, that goes out there, that Nemo that goes out there. So that buying scout conducts the buyer research as an individual, and probably anonymously. You've seen stats on how far along a person goes in their journey before engaging with you. So that's that buying scout kind of portion of the funnel. And then number two, lower in the funnel, there's the actual engagement. They get qualified for product interest by marketing. That's that marketing qualified. And then next, there's sales engagements with the buying scouts, that individual. However, the deal can stall if other members of the demand unit are not engaged. And so this sales portion, this is where things might change up for people who are embarking on ABM. The sales portion, even the marketing portion, can be engaging with the demand unit beyond the buying scout persona. So you can see there that cloud and the three personas, that's that buying group right there, or demand unit, if they have the intent to purchase your product. Now, here's the demand unit waterfall as a review. There's target demand. There's that universe of demand that you've identified, the number of accounts that are out there that might want to purchase your solution. And then there's active demand, which is the accounts that have the intent to research the problem that you solve or research different solutions. And that's active. They're out there. They're doing things, but that's different from engaged. And the active demand are folks that are out there doing research without engagement. And these are folks that can be surfaced to you via maybe intent monitoring companies, intent data companies out there. And you may have heard of some of them like Bombora and others. And then engaged demand, that's when they've engaged with your company via maybe that individual through those ebooks or webinars or things like that. And then prioritized demand, that's qualified by marketing via, I'll go through this later, but marketing automation perhaps and scoring and things like that. Qualified demand would be qualified by sales as an actual opportunity to pursue. Then there's pipeline stages, and then there's closed one. All right, and then how do you translate that into a buyer group of individuals? Well, here is a look at how you might actually look at the buyer group and the identification of that buyer group over time. In this case here, you've got a buyer group size that you've identified certain individuals. At the top, you may have just identified one person, and that's the buying scout. And as you progress down to, let's say, engaged demand, you might eventually flip to the point where you're engaging others in the demand unit. As you've prioritized that demand via, scoring, multiple people are downloading things on your website, and so maybe it's multiple individuals in the demand unit who have engaged. As you go to qualified demand, that's where you start, proactively engaging others in the demand unit. Who else is in that buyer group that needs to approve of budget, sign on the dotted line, and then eventually you get the pipeline and closed where you're pursuing those individual personas to get them to sign on that dotted line and purchase your product. How does this translate to Salesforce? Well, there are objects and records in Salesforce that exist for you to record this data. And they exist as accounts, leads, opportunity, contacts as well, and there's closed deals. So they can be directly translated. It all just kind of depends on what your business process is, and I'll go through some of those examples. So let's talk about those individual stages and how you might translate them to the Salesforce objects. At the top, you've got target accounts. You've defined your universe of accounts, and so you want to label them as target accounts. And then for engaged leads and prioritized leads, you may want to utilize leads as well as, obviously, you are involving contacts and accounts, and when you convert leads to contacts, that may be that stage where you are actually calling them qualified via sales. But that's, treating them as leads. And you can actually alternatively utilize opportunity creation right here at this point. That's one way to do it, is to create an opportunity for every lead who engages and perhaps create a contact, convert over a lead to a contact on the opportunity. So those are two alternatives that are suggested by SiriusDecisions as well. And as you go further and further down the funnel, it starts looking very familiar and mirrors what you probably do with response-based marketing in Salesforce, and that is the qualified account, which is an opportunity. It's got a dollar amount to it. It's got a contact and contact role attached to it as well. And then you've got pipeline and you've got closed accounts. Let's look at what this looks like. Okay, so what is a different opportunity? What is a different account? How do you treat different account entities? Because at the end of the day, a demand unit is essentially an opportunity. And how do you think about different demand units that you may have? Because you may have multiple accounts within a company like GE with many subsidiaries. How do you treat different accounts? How do you treat different opportunities? So on the left side here, you've got multiple demand units at one account, or multiple opportunities at one account. Here, RodeoNet is one account, and it's owned by Luke Duncan over here. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opportunities, or 5 demand units, basically. It could be the same individuals who are purchasing. It could be a mix of different departments that purchase the different solutions that you offer. But either way, it's 5 different opportunities at one account. Now, on the right side, you've got separate accounts with separate demand units. So here you've got 24 Carat as a company. Maybe it's a big holding company. And 24 Carat Healthcare is one subsidiary. 24 Carat 7 is another. And so you've got different opportunities attached to different accounts. Perhaps your business treats these different demand units and apportions them differently because you have different account owners. So for 24 Carat Healthcare, maybe you have a healthcare domain expert as a salesperson, and then for 24 Carat 7, you have a different one. And so perhaps you want to separate them. They have completely different departments, perhaps. It all kind of depends on the nature of your business, the nature of your sales cycle, the nature of your buying groups and the demand units in order for you to figure out how to treat them inside of Salesforce. Either way, you want to establish that process amongst your sales and marketing teams. So we talked about the demand unit and how to apportion them differently. You have to also make sure that you have perhaps the contact roles established differently. So one way to do that is utilizing this drop-down, this contact role drop-down. Here's an example here. For that RodeoNet 4 opportunity, Marianne may be part of a department that is the buying group for the product being sold to RodeoNet. So RodeoNet 4 represents one demand unit, and Marianne is, call it, a decision maker. So on the right side, you have a drop-down for decision maker for Marianne. You apportion a contact role for Adele and Indira, and then perhaps for RodeoNet 5, a different demand unit and different opportunity. Marianne may not even be there at all, or maybe a different role, or maybe a decision maker, but with different people attached. So again, understanding how demand units need to be incorporated into contact roles, that's pretty key, and you want to teach your sales folks what parts of the process they're responsible for. All right, so we talked about defining demand units. How do these demand units move down your funnel? Well, this is about defining your account qualification. Here you've got score versus grade, and this is one framework, and it's not just supported in Salesforce, but supported via marketing automation and in Pardot. those who work with Pardot know that there's this difference between grade and score. And so grade on the bottom is the profile fit, the firmographics of a company or that account. And the grade goes from F on the low side to A on the high side, A being an ideal match, F being unfit. And then the score is sort of a qualification of the engagement level. So it's hot or cold, right? That account, regardless of whether it's an ideal match or unfit, has a level of engagement with you, and that's scored via an account score of, call it a 0 to 100. Now, with that two-way matrix, you can see this profile versus engagement fit curve that I put here. And it's a framework of thinking in terms of how do you grade a company and how do you score that account's engagement with you. One way to think about it is, depending on whether they're on the left side or right side of the score, or the grade F or A, that's unideal versus ideal account. If an account lacks fit, then the engagement required is that they have to have downloaded a bunch of assets and maybe even request a demo for me to care. So I have to trip and fall through a lot of things on the website in order for this inbound request to matter to me. And again, when you do ABM, you're still going to have inbound requests. You're going to still have your legacy marketing that still exists. So you want to be opportunistic about it. By being opportunistic, I mean understanding the profile fit of the account as they come in, but then understanding how you're going to score their engagement as a profile fit of F. Now, conversely, you've got an account that represents the ideal fit, and they're on the right side. And so with this curve here, this account represents an ideal fit, and so they fit on the right side on the bottom on this curve. And being lower on the engagement required means that if this account represents ideal fit, all they need to do is sneeze on my website, and I'm just going to pursue this account aggressively. So either way, whatever you want to do and how you think about your curve, you want to ensure that you have your engagement level that's required set up and established, and maybe even apportioned via along the dimension of how much of a fit the account is. I wanted to go over a few ways to actually qualify the account within Salesforce. One is the account score roll-up. Here is an example of an account roll-up scoring report. As you can see here, you've got a 100 score and a 250 score, all for the same account, Burlington Textiles Corp of America. They added to 350. You can utilize this thing called Roll-Up Helper. That's an application on AppExchange. It's actually quite a helpful roll-up tool that is actually quite universal for other things aside from this score here that you can roll up. Go check it out. It's pretty cool. Another thing you can utilize is an account status field. So this is an example from a customer of ours. You can utilize this drop-down for tracking an account progression. And with this example, this is just a custom field, and these are just some example set values for this field. And regardless of what it actually says here, what you want to do for your company is establish a process for ensuring the timely filling in of that field and establishing the definitions of each of these values. For this company, it's for the customer, there's an SDR manager that actually manages this account status field, but for you, maybe it's every SDR and every AE is responsible for progressing an account along via this drop-down field. Whatever it is that you have established for you, you want to make sure that's completely defined and accurate. All right, let's get to the fun stuff here. ABM performance measurements. I've taught you a little bit about how to incorporate the demand unit waterfall into Salesforce to have the tracking of an account funnel. Let's talk about ABM performance measurement. Let's go over 3 different areas of campaign optimization metrics for accounts. 1, account engagement. 2, funnel progression. 3, revenue generation. account. So for account engagement, we're going to be talking about some metrics that look familiar, but they're about engagement with accounts. And we all know the lead engagement metrics, but let's think about what account engagement looks like. So this is an example of account persona penetration and an illustration of that. So here on the right side, you've got account personas and a view of different personas. Here are formula fields that are a count, zeros and ones and maybe twos, but these are counts of if there is a marketing leader, for example, that top left field right there. What this customer has utilized is a count of different account personas in order to ensure that there are no gaps. You, for your company, want to define the personas of the buyer group. Here we've got 8, but you may have some others. And so for this customer here, on the rightmost side, you see that there are some zeros. So that means there are some gaps. And so when you think about account engagement metrics, you can think about account penetration and lack of penetration via these gaps of engagement. And so this is one way to look at your account gaps in terms of the personas, and you want to utilize this to ensure the correct coverage of account personas by your sales folks. And so how do you fill in, just a quick note on how to fill in whether you have the right personas engaged. Now, when you have your different leads engaging with different campaigns out there, as well as your sales folks, and they're looking at their accounts and they're trying to understand whether they have spoken to those 8 people that they're required to speak to for account penetration. Well, one thing you have to ensure is that you have all your leads connected to your different accounts, and so that you don't have any of these leads that are supposed to be matched to the account completely cordoned off onto the side where they're missing and they're not engaged. So you can either enter them manually, connect them manually, ensuring that you've got the leads either with the accounts typed in, or you can utilize a lead to account matching technology. We have something called Matchmaker, and this is a screenshot of what that looks like. Basically, you've got leads that are matched to the account using a lead to account matching engine that connects different leads. So you can see here under AK Steel Holding Corporation, this is an account record here, but you've got different leads that are potentially matched to this account because their company and some other data as well leads you to believe that they might be connected to AK Steel Holding Corporation. So the technology handles connecting these leads to these accounts. As you can see here, the company names aren't all the same, and so it utilizes other variables in order to connect these leads to the account. This is a technology that we suggest you use so that you can save a lot of time in connecting these leads to accounts, and then you can actually be more comprehensive in your engagement. You can be more comprehensive in understanding your account penetration. One other way that I wanted to talk about account engagement and penetration is understanding how engaged they are, the actual level of engagement. What you see here highlighted is the fact that these are target accounts. So let's say you're creating a view of your account activity and you're focusing on target accounts. So that's checked on the right side. And then account activity rating. This is something that's a feature within Full Circle Matchmaker, but you want to have one way of seeing and summarizing your different accounts and understanding what activity level they are. So for example, here you've got them sorted, and it's excellent accounts and good accounts and maybe even some bad accounts. It's good to see the excellent ones where you're doing very well and they're very engaged so that you can focus on them. There are also ones where you are not engaged with at all and they're very poor on your activity rating. And so what you want to do is maybe even focus on those because they're cold for a reason. There may be opportunities there, maybe ways to improve your business processes to be very engaging for accounts who are cold. And then finally, with account engagement, I wanted to go over how to optimize campaigns. And one way to do that obviously, is to run some metrics separating your demand unit into the different personas within the buyer group. When you optimize your campaigns for account engagement, what you want to do is do segmented engagement metrics. And what I have on the bottom left, I know this is quite an eye chart here, but on the bottom left is a spreadsheet. This is one way to do it, and that is to break down your email campaigns by certain subjects and by different other variables such as the assets that are included. You want to understand different open rates as well as other metrics such as conversion rates, et cetera, for each of these. And what you can then further do is segment them by the personas within the demand unit. So at the top of that, above that spreadsheet, as you can see, there's a bit of a conditional formatting for coloring for those that have higher numbers. So that's a really cool way to visualize your higher performing emails. And in this case, this is campaign optimization for email campaigns in this example. And so on the left side, the top here, there's this line chart and the comparison of HR managers versus marketing execs, and seeing and understanding the different open rates of different emails over time when it comes to maybe even different emails, different assets, even segments and segments and segments, such that you have an understanding of what works and what doesn't. And then on the right side, that translates into an optimized engagement. So maybe for HR managers, you need to focus on specific assets such as one-pagers, or maybe you need to have, or you have specific subject lines. So you can create an optimized email that you can test and experiment with, focused on the HR manager's open rate. All right, I went through engagement. Let's talk about funnel progression. All right, you can see here an account and conversion rate through the funnel, and these are different portions of the funnel. This is an MQA to SAA. That's the marketing and the sales handoff right there. And when I say MQA to SAA, that's marketing qualified account to sales accepted account. You can also look at the MQA to demo phase. So how many of your marketing qualified accounts actually made it to the demo stage? And then finally, even from demo to one, you can cut and slice and dice this in many ways. You can take a look at even MQA to one, overall, or all the way from inquiry to one as well. Either way, these are different slices of the funnel in terms of points in time and conversion rates. And then you can slice and dice along different dimensions, such as, for example, the segmentation of what are your conversion rates along these funnel stages, but by salesperson or maybe by industry. Certain salespeople might be performing well with your ABM strategy. Maybe it's an opportunity to retrain them. Certain industries may be performing well as well, and maybe there's an opportunity to focus on different industries. And then finally, target versus non-target accounts. This is a view of understanding, whether your target accounts are more receptive to your engagements versus your non-target accounts. This is a way to evaluate your ABM. Similarly, I just wanted to show you account velocity statistics so that you want to understand your flow through your funnel. With full circle response management of one of our products, you get to see with date stamping and funnel tracking of your leads and that type of technology. You get a comprehensive and accurate view of how long it takes for your accounts and opportunities to progress within the stages. As you can see here, we've got individual stages, but also at the end down here, an overall sum of the stages. And maybe you want to take a look at some of these in a report in Salesforce. So here's a split of target accounts, the checked target accounts versus the non-target accounts, the 51,000 records. So for your 346 records, you've got your different funnel stages and the volume of leads and accounts going through them, and then you've got different opportunities that came out of them, as well as the different dollar amounts associated with those accounts. Now, what you want to do with that is then even drill down even further. So in this case, maybe drill down into the different campaign types with different campaign types that were engaging with your target accounts. So let's click that drill down. So when you drill down into the campaign types, you've got different campaign types on the left side and the stats and the metrics that you saw before. But drilled down into the different campaign types. This is where you start seeing which campaign types are effective in your funnel metrics reporting. And the last thing I'll talk about in terms of the account progression is obviously there are accounts won and then there are accounts closed lost. And so you got to talk about the lost deals as well. This is one segmentation that's very useful in understanding where you lost your deals. But in this case, this is the segmenting by loss reason. One thing you want to do in establishing your account funnel and your account progression is a process with which you define why you lost a deal, and you want to establish these clear definitions so that when you see these bars on this bar chart, you can understand, some of the trends here. So, for example, there's that big brown in Q3 2016. That's prospect non-responsive, and then that shrunk in Q4. So perhaps you did a better job of gaining some responsiveness from prospects, whereas it grew in Q3, and perhaps this company fixed that problem. And hopefully you get to see trends where you start fixing these kinds of expanding bars and expanding problems as you see these trends. All right, let's go into revenue generation and revenue impact of your campaigns that you're trying to optimize. All right, in evaluating your campaigns, there are two ways to look at it. One is separating your campaigns and their respective conversion rates and their respective, call it, sum of opportunity, the counts and the volume that they bring in. So this is funnel metrics applied to your campaigns, and in this case, these are different promo channels here. You've got different ads, you've got different events, you've got events as a category, email as a category, and so you can compare the conversion rates as well as the volume of these trigger channels. You can see some, for example, maybe very high conversion rates, such as videos. Demos obviously are very high volume, but then they may be high conversion rate, but they may be low volume. And then on the right side, it's a completely different way of looking at the metrics by campaign, but it's a very useful one, and that is revenue generation. And so in this case, you're translating some of the funnel fallout or funnel outcomes into revenue. But in this case, this is a multi-touch attribution model. This is something you can do with Full Circle's product, and that is an attribution. Here, you've got an account even spread model where you're taking the dollar amounts for each deal and you're spreading the dollar revenue amongst the different campaigns that were very engaging. And in this case, it's an even spread, so evenly dividing that, for example, that $1 million deal amongst the different, call it the 5 campaign responses, and that's responses by the account. And I'll show you what an account-based even spread model looks like compared to different configurations in Salesforce. But here's the division of the revenue pie chart by the different promo channels. And as you can see here in the green, I believe that's website form. That's very, call it impactful to revenue along the based on this account even spread model. And you can have different models, and that's a separate webinar altogether that we have. But certainly you want to have established the methodology and other methodologies with regards to attribution. One other thing I wanted to note was this dimension, right? The dimension of channel. You can have it by channel, you can have it by offer, and what you want to be clear on is that you don't mix and match the two. A good attribution solution separates these different dimensions such that you are evaluating purely one dimension versus another. So for example, campaign channel. Here on the left side, you've got different channels, email, for example. But you don't want to mix that with a different dimension. So on the right side, you've got a completely separate pie chart for offer. This is an example of maybe the format of your campaign and how what kind of asset is being delivered, whether it's, for example, a video or a long-form piece of asset, or maybe even a short-form one. What doesn't make sense is if you mix and match these two pie charts such that you have, webinar as one slice and then, call it website as another, because your webinars do exist on your website. So that's a a thing you want to make sure that you clarify as two different dimensions. So for attribution, I mentioned that there are two different models, and one is this opportunity-based model, and here's this account-based model. And let me clarify that. On the left side, you've got, call it these contacts that are named to your opportunity. I showed you earlier that there are contacts that you can name to the opportunity via their contact roles. Now, with these contacts and their contact roles established, you can name, for example, the 3 people that are supposed to be named to the opportunity and no others. So your campaign attribution model with Full Circle, it supports this left side of just the opportunity and the contacts named to the opportunity. But on the right side, you may want to establish attribution of that revenue and give credit to campaigns that were engaging to other contacts. And so these are contacts named to the account. This is an account-based model where you may not have named the specific contact to the opportunity. Maybe your sales folks don't do a great job of connecting every contact and every contact role to the opportunity. Full Circle's campaign attribution solution supports both of these and is flexible enough to loop in contacts that are named to the account itself. And with a lead-to-account matching technology, you can make sure that you're connecting the right contacts to the right accounts. So you're including more and more campaigns, so you're crediting the right campaigns with revenue credit. And you can understand more fully, more accurately, more comprehensively which campaigns are actually contributing to revenue so that you're not forgetting about some campaigns that are only engaged with contacts that you haven't identified. Last thing I wanted to go over is ABM versus non-ABM plays. Now, you're measuring ABM campaigns and non-ABM campaigns. Let's say you have 1,000 target accounts. You've closed 500 of them. Great, your ABM strategy was a success, right? That's 50% close rate. Not necessarily. Your ABM strategy may not have been effective. It may have just been 500 accounts that you've closed via inbound. So you need to separate your ABM plays from your non-ABM plays and measure them separately. You can utilize a campaign naming convention, so you can literally write into Salesforce ABM campaign hyphen yada, 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 or you can utilize a checkbox on your campaign such that they're labeled ABM campaigns versus not. And what you want to do then is also separate them into control group versus non-control group. And I'll show you what that looks like. Here you've got an ABM marketing group versus a control group. This is from a customer of ours who utilizes our solution to measure the performance of their accounts that are in the ABM marketing group versus a control group. And they identified 10 control group companies or accounts randomly. So they're not cherry picking. They're randomly picking 10 to be the control group. And as they committed ABM plays towards one group versus just a regular inbound, their legacy campaigns to the control group, you can see here a marked difference in their ABM marketing versus their control group. And the bottom line is on the bottom here. So the ABM marketing ones converted at a higher rate, but at the end of the day, at the bottom, you've got 2.5 times the average selling price for the ABM marketing group compared to the control group. And that is a testament to their ABM plays. So they can optimize their ABM plays now because they've proven that they work better than their inbound or legacy plays. So I wanted to end with some summary takeaways. One, you want to understand what a demand unit is for your business, define your buyer group, and define your personas. Second, you want to track funnel progression of individuals in demand units and map those leads to accounts. So establish your Salesforce definitions. You want to establish your account funnels, and you want to map leads to accounts so that you're being comprehensive about your account penetration. And next, you want to translate the demand units into Salesforce nomenclature. So you've got your leads, you've got your contacts, you've got your opportunities. When do you create an opportunity? How do you separate different opportunities or demand units compared to different accounts? And then finally, you want to establish and measure KPIs for account performance as well as account-based marketing performance. So what are the right ABM plays and how are your ABM plays compared to your inbound plays? And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Brian.
Perfect. Thank you, Feng, for that awesome presentation, and it sparked a lot of great questions. But before I get to those, I'd like to remind everyone once again to please share your thoughts and feedback before logging off today. You can do so by clicking the survey icon, which you can see circled here on the bottom of your screen. The survey will also automatically launch when this session ends. So now let's get on to those questions. Okay, the first question I have here is from Evan. Evan asks, would you still measure MQLs at the individual level as opposed to MQAs at the account level?
Got it. That's from Evan, the leads at the individual level. Yeah, you should still do that. It's still something that marketers do. Individuals still conduct research, so you want to measure the individuals and their engagement level. You just want to map in your head or somewhere on paper the ratio of the individuals, the MQLs to the MQAs. So you want to validate over time, hey, how many MQLs does it take to actually qualify an account, right? So yeah, the answer is yes. It's very familiar, and you want to still do that. You just got to have that mapping of what's a lead to what's an account.
Great, that makes sense. Next question is from Marissa. Marissa asks, is account performance the same as opportunity performance? Should I roll up metrics to the accounts or to the opportunity?
Yeah. So this is related to the slide that I had with regards to the whole idea if GE has many sub departments, or is GE one whole account and there's many opportunities? I'm sorry to say that it's the cop-out answer. It depends. You need to define your opportunities. You need to define whether GE is 1,000 different accounts for you, as opposed to GE is one account with 1,000 different opportunities. Well, how it might be different is that you have different. Maybe you have the same buying group, so perhaps the same department that manages that same software solution that you sell. So really, it's just different carbon copies. And so depending on how it looks, maybe if it's the same buying group, that's one account, but then it's different opportunities to sell. So what really is important is, when you measure your account penetration, what does that mean if it's 100% account penetration for this specific opportunity, for this specific demand unit? If 100% account penetration is not accurate for what it is reflecting reality, then you want to have a different entity to say that you have 0% penetration, et cetera, et cetera. It needs to just reflect reality, and as you define what that reality is, and then technically, what is that in Salesforce?
Great, that makes sense. Appreciate the clarification there. Next question is from George, and I think it's referring to a specific slide. It says, what is the account activity rating from your account engagement slide?
Got it. Yeah, that's just the count of responses to the campaign. So as different leads and contacts respond to different campaigns in Salesforce, the account activity rating is summarizing that into a word or a rating, and you can define that rating inside of our product Matchmaker. So that's a field within Matchmaker that you can define. Oh, it's hot, cold, medium, et cetera, and it accounts of the different campaign responses by your leads and contacts attached to that account.
Makes sense. Next question we have is from Gabby. Gabby asks, do you recommend specific campaigns based on a certain percentage of account penetration? So, for example, she mentioned like 25% penetration equals these campaigns versus 75% penetration equals other campaigns. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. After looking at that, I realized it's about sort of what she's asking is account penetration, expanding of account penetration. There are certain campaigns that are focused on account penetration and expansion as opposed to those that are fully penetrated. And I'd say that may be one way to look at it, but I think that the more low-hanging fruit for me is if you do campaigns depending more on the funnel stage or the persona, because a person at a company that you're trying, or an account that you're trying to penetrate, doesn't know that they are 75% or 25% penetrated. They only know that their job is to be an HR manager. So you really need to have campaigns focused more on what funnel stage they're at and what persona they are. So this is a HR manager at the stage of considering different products. Yes, you need to engage this person with the understanding that you've already engaged with the 2 other colleagues of hers, but I wouldn't say you should base all of your campaign cadences on how penetrated that account is. I think it's more about what stage they're at, and the penetration obviously affects what funnel stage they're at, but base it on the funnel stage itself and not the penetration of the proxy. And then you base it on the persona itself because it's really how you get personalized. I think that's how you do your campaign basis. And then account penetration is just something you use as an input.
Really interesting. Thanks for that more in-depth description there. Awesome. That's all the time we have for questions, unfortunately, but if your question went unanswered, we'll be sure to connect with you once the webinar concludes. So keep an eye out for us reaching out to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Thanks again to Full Circle Insights' Feng Hong for a great session, and thank you to all our attendees for taking the time to join us today. As a reminder, today's webinar will be available on demand, so you can access it at any time and share it with your peers and colleagues. Be sure to check out more COS sessions taking place throughout the rest of the week. Our next webcast starts later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, in which the folks at DemandBase will share some analog strategies for ABM success. Thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.